Wouldn't it be nice if your dream clients were coming to you and banging on your door? Well, that's all possible with Facebook ads. And I'm going to walk you through how you can spend less time and energy trying to drum up business for you to sign up new clients, and how you can get them to come to you on an automated basis. So if this is the first time joining one of my lives, I'm Brian Czekanski, and I help coaches accelerate their growth and their impact through Facebook ads while cutting their work hours in half. So go to my opt-in right here, fullconfidenceads.com. It's a free video training that will walk you through how to, especially in 2022, how you can start to build Facebook ads in a way that really captures your audience's attention, those dream clients that you're looking for, how to actually go into Business Manager, set all these up, and how to optimize your ads over time. So really is probably going to be over the next few days, so a multi-part series that I'll go through. But today I kind of want to just set up in terms of how is this opportunity possible where you can stop having to spend so much time doing organic content and doing all these kind of things, putting all this time and energy trying to build up your business, and how can you start to get your dream clients coming to you 24/7, already warmed up. They already have that know, like, and trust factor already built up. So I'm going to walk you through kind of just a presentation that I put together a couple of days ago that will help kind of put this into perspective. And that will actually go through how do we actually go through and get them to the other side. So I'll just share my screen right here. Again, what I'm calling and I'm going to go through a method that I call the keys method. It's all about kind of these 4 steps in terms of how to get your dream customers not only more interested, but how do they become a client that is interested in working with you kind of straight off the bat, even before you get on a sales call or anything like that. So again, the promise here, how to have your dream clients banging at your door while cutting your work hours in half. So if we go to the next page, this is kind of, this is going to be one that I kind of repeat over and over again. But if you think about how to build your business, and this is something that I had, especially when I started out as an entrepreneur, is really the equation that you're looking for is how can I start as many conversations as possible? And in those conversations, there's obviously going to be a select few that turn into relationships. As you build up that relationships, as they build up that trust in you, they're eventually going to become clients. And obviously for you and your business, we want to kind of accelerate this progress as quickly as possible. But especially when I was first starting out as an entrepreneur, for a lot of people, even a couple of years into being a business owner, they're not exactly sure how best to do this. Like, how do I start up the conversations with my audience? How do I get them interested? How do I move this process along so that they can build up that relationship with me, so they trust me, they know, like, and trust me, and they want to become a client right away. Obviously, as a business owner, you want this to happen within a period of a couple of hours if you can. Somebody that came to you, they've never heard of you before, you warm them up really quickly, and they get to the point where, well, okay, this is exactly your product, your service is the perfect solution for me and the problem that I'm dealing with or the outcome that I'm looking for. So here's my credit card. Let's sign up right away. So, like, again, that's the dream scenario. But again, how you actually get there as quickly as possible, is something you kind of have to work at. So, kind of the number one way that, especially for some of the newer business owners, or even for people that have thought about building a business over time, what they do is they do all the things. So again, this is what you hear from gurus. This is what you hear from coaches out there. It's just like, okay, there's this broad brush of strategies that are out there. And I kind of just put all of them all together. Not that you're going to follow all these all at one time, but I can tell you as an entrepreneur, I've tried every single one of these strategies at one point in time. Because again, when I was first starting my business, I had no idea how to, not only who I wanted to have a conversation with, but how do I get those conversations, turn them into relationships, and turn them into clients. So again, things like blog posts, Facebook Live, social media posts, LinkedIn, live events, cold outreach. Like, again, if you follow, any of the gurus that are out there, any of the coaches that are out there, each one of them will be putting together a program that talks about one aspect of this kind of organic content, where you don't have to spend a lot of money to build these conversations and hopefully turn them into relationships and eventually clients. But what you do have to do is spend a lot of your time and energy towards building that. So again, you do all these things, and the basic premise is, like, as you do these things, and if you're not getting results, the basic mistake that I made, and the basic mistake that a lot of business owners make, is like, okay, if I'm not getting results with something like networking or Facebook groups or masterminds, it's probably a result of me not doing enough. So I probably have to do more. So that's when they start a podcast. That's when they start doing blog posts, and they just spread themselves too thin. And again, I've been there as well. Like I spread myself too thin, particularly a few years ago, particularly during the pandemic, completely burned myself out. And it took a long time to get back from it. Again, like 6 months before I was ready to get back into my business and recover from it. So again, I've made every marketing mistake that you can make, and I'm coming back to you and trying to help you along the way and saying like, okay, don't fall into the mistake of, if something is not working, saying to yourself, okay, I just have to do more stuff. I need to do more things. I need to buy that course that's going to help me get into my podcast or help me write my book or things like that. If something is not working, if you're starting YouTube or you are doing networking and you're not getting results consistently month after month, that's the market's way of saying that your message is not quite on mark. You're not quite getting to the point where people are building relationships with you and eventually getting to clients. So like, let's take the hint from the market and saying like, okay, your messaging is off somewhere, and let's get back to what you have to do. And again, we'll go into like what that means and what are kind of those foundational things to really look at in your marketing, but also your messaging, to make sure that we're moving from conversations to relationships to clients really quickly. But again, what I see time and time again is business owners are just trying to do everything. They're trying to be on this carousel, the entrepreneur's carousel of getting into all these courses. If something's not working for them, it might just mean that I need the next shiny object. I need the next course. I need the next idea. And that's going to make all the difference. So you kind of just start chasing around. Whereas I'm saying like, okay, maybe let's sit down and think about like, okay, who do we want to have a conversation with? What is that message that's really going to resonate with them? It's really going to stick out in the market. And how can we get them to the point where they are clients and also building those relationships over time? So again, kind of different way of thinking and a different way of doing things. So again, this is where Facebook ads come in. So the great part about Facebook ads is you can put out an ad in front of a lot of different people. You can spark up those conversations. Again, you can create an ad one time, and you can use Facebook as kind of your partner to spread it out and get your message in front of as many people as possible. So again, the starting point for a lot of new clients for me is, okay, let's start with $50 a day. That's going to get us in front of enough people. We're off it, what we're optimizing for is getting 60 new people coming in as leads, as qualified leads coming in every single week. So again, 4 times 60, 240 people as those leads every single month is what we're trying for. Spending $50 a month, $50 a day. So $50, times that by 30, you come out with the math there. So again, you're spending a few $1,000s, but again, on the other side, what are you looking at? 240 potential leads. And obviously you're not going to book each one of those 240 as clients. You're going to have a percentage of that depending on what your closing rate is and everything else. But again, you can kind of see very quickly how that can be a really powerful way of doing things. Again, what are we doing? We're starting conversations with people by putting our ad in front of people. We're using automation. So again, there's so many different ways of doing this, and I'll cover one of the ways in kind of using my keys method, and the one that I would suggest in terms of doing that, and what I'm going to call conversation ads in building those relationships over time via automation. And we get to the point where, again, at the end of the day, if you have a certain number of spots on your calendar, where you're saying like, okay, I've got spots for 3 to 5 clients this week over the next, as I think into 2022, I've got enough space on my calendar for 3 to 5 clients in January. So we can start running ads to really produce that, to make sure that come January, you have those numbers. The certain number of people within your market are going through the automation, and you can really solve for the amount of clients that you have. So if your calendar all of a sudden fills up, January rolls around, you get a big giant influx of business. You're completely bold. You maybe have 1 or 2 spots available. Okay, that's where we can lower the ad spend and get to the point where the great part about Facebook ads is you can get to the point where you can figure out like, okay, to get to that one client that I'm looking for over a certain period, I have to spend X number of dollars. And exactly if you spend Facebook, again, after the first month, you'll get an idea of, okay, if this thing is working, if I'm getting leads, I'm turning them into clients. I get to the point where I know exactly how much I have to spend on Facebook to generate a client anytime I need to. And that's kind of the power of it if you're doing it correctly. So again, I'll go into a lot more detail in terms of how to do this. But again, a lot of people kind of buy into this. They see the magic of Facebook ads. Like, okay, like Facebook is doing all the work for me. Like I'm just creating a message once and it's putting it in front of my audience, kind of like a billboard on a highway, whatever metaphor you want it to do. But again, this allows me, that frees up my life. Now I don't have to do all those things. I don't have to write a book. I don't have to do a podcast. I don't have to do all these things because Facebook is my avenue for creating more conversations. And as people click through my ads, as they go through my automation, that's where we're building up that relationships. We're building up that know, like, and trust factor so that when they do either buy your product or service directly, or when they get on a sales call, they're already warmed up. They already have built that relationship with you. So it makes it super easy. It not only increases your closing rate, but it makes it more likely. And for that end prospect, they're going to be much more excited about the pathway forward. And I'll go into why that's really important as we think about it. So, as we get to that next step, everybody kind of, like this is what I hear time and time again. Everybody gets bought into what Facebook ads are all about. It's like, okay, once I run an ad, this is going to solve all my problems. I'm going to have the business of my dreams. It's going to free up all my time. I don't have to do all the, business generation. All I can do is focus on my clients that I want. I can get them great results. I can run Facebook ads and do it in that way. But I can tell you that Facebook ads are very much like riding the bike for the very first time. Like this is something that I'm teaching my 4-year-old to do, like, riding a bike. You might have training wheels on. You might want to take those training wheels off, but you kind of go back to you as a child, get back to being on that bike for the first time. And maybe your mom or dad was right behind you, kind of guiding you along the way. And they're trying to get to the point where they can, kind of let go and you can you can ride your bike on your own, balancing it correctly and things like that. And eventually you get to the point where it's like, okay, I can hop on a bike anytime. And this is completely natural. You kind of get past that meridian line where it's just like, this is super easy. I'm not sure why I struggle with this, over time. But again, especially in those first few days, first few weeks, Facebook ads can feel like this really confusing, bumpy ride that all you can think about is like, what if I crash? What if I spend all this money? What if I spend thousands, like over $1,000 on Facebook ads in that first month and I don't get anything? Like what if that happens? And for a lot of, people starting out on Facebook ads for the first time, that's likely what happens. So again, on the next page, this is where they end up. They end up kind of crashing very quickly. And again, that nightmare scenario of where you spent $1,500 in that first month and you have nothing to show for it kind of leaves people with a big giant hangover, thinking like, okay, maybe Facebook ads aren't for me. Maybe it's not right for my business. Maybe I have a certain set of clients that it isn't the right message for. And I can tell you that that's not the case. And it really just is a function of your messaging just wasn't on point. It didn't speak your client's language. Maybe your offer wasn't absolutely what they wanted. There's a whole host of reasons why maybe your Facebook ads just didn't resonate. But I can tell you the number one reason why, and the reason why I see businesses fail on Facebook time and time again, it comes down to, one of the things they do is very much like a lemonade stand. They kind of just create a Facebook ad that's all about them. It's all about their offer. They just put it out there. They say, like, take, for example, say I'm a personal development coach. They put it out there. Hey, I'm a personal development coach. Here's who I go out. Here's my primary audience. And they put everything based on price. So again, here's a free strategy call where you can sign up for. Here's a free lead magnet. Whatever it is, we're just competing on price. We're just putting ourselves out there. Here's my service. Here's who I want to have a conversation with. And here's some kind of, here's something based on price where, you should sign up right away. And the reason why that doesn't work is because it's, number one, it's all about you. Your audience really is always asking the question, what's in it for me? So they're not really, the fact that you have a really low, priced offer doesn't really entice them. You might be sitting there going like, I'm almost giving this away for free, but again, for your audience, they don't see the value of it. Again, think of it, going back to the metaphor, like 10-cent lemonade. Well, what's my confidence level that lemonade is going to be exactly what I'm looking for? And the other thing is like what you don't recognize is your market is doing the same thing. Your messaging looks exactly like every other personal development coach out there, or whatever your business is. Like, you are doing the same thing that all your competitors are doing. So for your audience, all they're seeing is lemonade 10 cents, but how do they pick between the two? How do they know which one is better than the other one? How do they know that that 10 cents is going to be worth their while, that that return on investment is going to be exactly what they're looking for? And that kind of builds up some skepticism, like, again, especially if they've hired a coach before, especially if they've tried all these other options, and they likely have, or they haven't gotten results. Now they come to your offer with a degree of skepticism. And again, I would use another metaphor, is kind of like, imagine that you're in the grocery store aisle and you're standing there looking at all the pasta sauces. Like, if you have no knowledge of what those pasta sauces are all about, like which one is better than which. You see Ragu there, you see Prego, and you're just like, I know those aren't the tastiest, but at least I know those brands. And then you look at all the other labels, and it's just like, how do I differentiate? How do I know which one tastes better? So you might go actually with the one that is the most expensive, because you might equate that price with taste and quality and things like that. So you might pick actually the most expensive, more premium one, because you're associating that with the taste. But for the rest of them, it's kind of just based on what the labels look like, and what that design look like. And obviously, with a lot of pasta sauces, like, their design on their label doesn't always equate to how great the pasta sauce is. So again, your audience is sitting in that same situation where they're kind of walking down the street and they're seeing hundreds and hundreds of lemonade stands, and they don't know. They don't know which one to even choose. So they kind of sit there kind of confused, and they're kind of waiting for you to give some kind of differentiation and saying like, okay, like, give me a hint here in terms of like why I should choose you. So again, it's kind of all about putting the right message out there. And this kind of gets back to, again, this is one of the things that I just learned from Mike Michalowicz in his book Get Different, that I highly suggest you pick up. But this is one of his main premises. It's like, okay, you might be sitting there as a coach thinking like, I am better than 99% of the competition. And you probably are. You're probably, delivering a service that is getting people results, and they'll probably have a great experience. But again, in your marketing, where you're just throwing up your offer and making it more about you and your coaching and all the, trying to build up your credibility and not making it about your audience, people are seeing that from everybody else. So you're kind of just blending into this giant sea of sameness that's out there. So it gets back to like, better isn't different. Different is better. So again, like, you have, especially with your Facebook ads, especially in that news feed, you have, milliseconds in terms of to get people's attention. If you don't get people's attention, they're not going to be able to find out if you're better than all the other coaches that are out there. They're not going to be able to, get to know you at all, or even go through any of your automation. So that's why it's really important to, be noticeable, to kind of bring out what's unique about your coaching, what's unique about your solution, or even in your advertising. How can you talk about something different than what they're seeing from the rest of the audience? So that kind of gets down to doing your research about, what are your competitors going out there and saying? What are they promising? And how can you do something that's completely different, that makes you more, I kind of talk about like, how can you stand out almost like a unicorn in your market, and really stand out and catch people's attention? And again, in that millisecond that you have to catch somebody's attention, that is kind of the starting point for the conversation. But again, if you haven't caught their attention, if they continue to scroll because you're just saying more of the same things that they see over and over again, then you're not even going to give yourself a chance to go through and do that. So again, the conundrum for you becomes like, okay, like, how do I start to experiment in terms of finding out what's different? Like, what is something that's really going to catch my audience's attention? Like, I don't want to have to spend $1,500 to find out that my message isn't noticeable. It isn't catching their audience's attention. So what I'm going to do a little bit later is tell you how you can do that by spending almost 10% of that. So how can I spend a few $100s, or even less than that, as low as $1 a day, to start doing this experimentation to find out like, okay, what is the message that is really going to resonate with my audience, that is going to allow me to be noticeable, to start that conversation and get on to forming that relationship and eventually getting them to become a client. So again, an easier path. Kind of think about it as like Facebook ads with training wheels, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But again, think about this is like, okay, like for you, you have the best quality service and product, and you're going to get people the outcome that they're looking for, but they don't know that yet. They're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So again, the starting point for your Facebook ad, and however way you do it, whether you're running conversion ads or, as I'll get into, the conversation ads that I'll cover, that first part is, how can I be different? How can I be noticeable so that people stop in their tracks, they start to listen to me, and we start to have that conversation back and forth. And the best way to kind of do this is really to get into the head of your audience. So again, really understanding like, what is the buyer psychology? Like, what does my audience really need to know, and how do they really operate to the point where they're ready to put down their credit card? Like, how do we move from that person, that we're starting a conversation with, to move them to a relationship, to move them to a client as quickly as possible? So again, here's another metaphor of using that. So again, think about an elephant that has a rider on top, just kind of going along the path. Like, this is your client. Think of it as kind of like your client's brain. So flip to the next one. So that rider on the elephant is kind of that logical, that logical start of the brain. Like, you can put out a message that makes complete sense to them and they're ready to move ahead. But the problem is they're riding, and the bigger part of their brain is kind of that emotional brain, that brain that part of the brain that really needs motivation, but also is kind of swayed by whatever thoughts, feelings, and emotions that they have at that time. So again, one of the things I would kind of put out there is like, think about somebody that is looking to lose weight. So the logical brain kind of starts out with like, okay, like I would love, they look in the mirror and they say like, I would love to just lose a few pounds, and I'd love to, do this. And the kind of question is like, how do I go about doing that? So, but the problem is they have that emotional brain. Like, everybody starts January with the thoughts of like, okay, if I can just lose a few pounds, like I'd be in much better health. I'd be in a much better place. But the problem is they, the next time they, go to the bakery, or the next time they go to a birthday party, and that chocolate cake is sitting there, or that cupcake is sitting there, that emotional brain all of a sudden kind of overrides that logical brain. So again, think about that rider and the elephant. Like, that rider can only control that elephant for so long before it gets really tired. And that elephant, continues to move, that's going to dictate where action is being taken. Like, if the elephant wants to go in a direction, it doesn't really matter where the logical brain wants to go. That elephant is going to push in other ways. And this gets to a scenario as well as like, okay, maybe a logical brain has already made a choice in terms of what direction they want to make. So again, they've already chosen, we want to lose some weight. Maybe the emotional brain just isn't on board yet. So we're going in two different directions. And this kind of brings the third point of kind of deciding on a path forward and showing your audience like, okay, logical brain, emotional brain, let's get on the same page here. And let me prove to you by, putting out an ad message that kind of speaks to both sides of the brain, that logical side, but also that emotional side, in terms of like, why is my solution the best path for you forward? How can I kind of appease both sides of the brain so that they're both on board? And that's kind of the best case scenario, where you have the logical brain, the emotional brain is kind of seeing the path forward. By using your solution becomes the vehicle to the outcome that they want the most. And that's what we're trying to get to the point where we're doing that. And this kind of brings up, again, going back to my keys method, how do we actually do that? Because again, you think about the emotional side, you think about the logical side, and a lot of times they are not moving in the right direction altogether. So we really have to kind of think about, like, in a logical order, especially with our Facebook ads, like, how do we kind of cater to both sides of their brain, but also build up enough trust where the logical brain and emotional brain are moving together so that they're moving down the path that they want to the most. So this kind of gets into the keys method. So again, as I think about those keys, as I kind of break them down, the number one, that K within the keys, is knock them off their chair. Again, this kind of gets back to, how do we differentiate? How do we say something different than what your competition is saying? If you're saying the same things that your competition is saying, your Facebook ad is going to get bypassed almost unconsciously by your audience, because they're just like, okay, I've heard this before, I tried this before, you're not saying anything new to me here. So now we have to get to the point where it's like, okay, and there's several ways of doing this, and we'll get into this over the next few days on how you can actually do that by running these conversation ads. But again, the point is here to be different from what everybody else is saying. How can you differentiate your process, your solution, all those kind of things in a way that, again, knocks them off their chair as they're scrolling through? They're just like, whoa, like this is incredible. Like I've got to pay attention at least for the next few seconds in terms of what this person is putting out there and what, giving, again, their time and attention. Again, in the Facebook news feed, that's a matter of the next few seconds. It's not the next few minutes. It's not the next few hours. They've given you the opportunity to stop their scroll, and for the next 3 to 5 seconds, you've got to continue that conversation enough to where they want to go. So this kind of gets to the E within the keys. Again, let's go to that emotional brain. Again, I talked about how it's kind of the elephant. It's the biggest thing in terms of driving their motivation. So that's where I want to go to that emotional brain first. I've grabbed their attention, but now I want to emotionally engage them, because I know if they're not motivated to move forward, if they're not motivated to follow my path, then I've kind of lost them altogether. Like most people will try and logically reach out to their customers, but you really have to start with that emotional type of the brain, because if you don't grab that and kind of sway their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, you've kind of lost the battle altogether. So, after you've kind of caught their attention, want to emotionally engage them. And obviously you can do those things together. Like a great thing that you can do is knock them off their chair by sharing an emotional story, by really, saying something or sharing a story that really resonates with them altogether. So you can kind of tie these first two parts all together. But again, a great way of doing it is we want to get the elephant on board in terms of your solution altogether. And that kind of gets into the next step in terms of really bringing together not only the path forward, but now that you've got the emotional, elephant side of their brain on board, let's go back to their logical brain and show them in terms of, you've talked about the outcome that they want the most. You've kind of emotionally engaged them, so the elephant's on board. Let's go back to that logical brain and start to explain our unique formula. Let's start to walk through. You've put out a big promise. You've talked about the outcome that they want the most. That emotional brain is very intrigued. They want to go forward. But the logical brain has to kind of think, is kind of saying like, okay, this sounds great, but how is it all possible? So that's what your unique formula is all about, kind of giving them the breadcrumbs of how you can get them to that outcome that they want the most. And this is really important because, that outcome is something that, again, your competitors are putting out there and saying that they can achieve. But if you don't kind of build that belief bridge between where they are right now and where they want to go the most, they're not going to have enough belief, especially from the logical side of the brain, in terms of sitting there and saying like, okay, this is possible for me. So you have to walk them through and how you work with clients. What's step 1? What's step 2? What's step 3? Kind of that subsequent process of what are those mini achievements along the way that are going to get them to that eventual outcome that they want the most, and really making it clear in their head. Again, this is where it's great to use metaphors, analogies to make it super simple as possible, to let them know like, okay, like you have struggled with this before, but I have created something that builds on the flaws of all the other solutions that are out there. And this is a great way to start, knocking down all those other options that they might be considering, and talking about how those other options are all flawed, and how you've, kind of perfected this unique formula that kind of builds upon all those other options and makes it, even better, how you can kind of accelerate the results or get them better results over time. But again, you can't do that until until you've kind of caught their attention, caught their notice, emotionally engaged them, and then started to build the belief over time. And then the last part is really selling them on the next step. So again, we've started a conversation with them. The keys method is all about starting that conversation, starting to build that relationship, but they're not going to become a client right away. So we're going to be patient. We're going to set that next reasonable step that you want them to take. And this really feeds into like, okay, like how do we start to build a relationship with people online? How can we do it as quickly as possible? Again, there's so many different ways of doing it. And I'm going to talk about over the next few days how I would suggest that you do it. But, in getting them into that automation, like let's start to introduce like, okay, here's the journey that you're going to go on, whether it's a webinar, whether it's a bunch of videos, whether it's a lead magnet, whether it's email sequence. Again, there's hundreds of different ways that you can start to use automation. alongside Facebook ads to start to build that relationship. But we want to sell them on that next step. We want to let them know, like, okay, like you've heard a lot of great things from me. We built up a little bit of trust here, but this is the next step that you're going to take. Kind of taking them by the hand and saying, like, okay, like this next step in the process, it's going to, like, again, if you're going into a webinar, like here's all the things that you're going to learn, building up some curiosity, letting them know what it's all about, why they should spend the next half hour, 45 minutes of their time listening to you and going through and explaining your solution in a little bit more detail. Again, it's really important to, again, hold their hand, but also let them know what's in it for them, because that's always what your audience is asking about. So again, really thinking about, these 4 different things is really important. And then going back again to the buyer psychology and really understanding, like, what's going on in the head of your prospects and how can you turn them into, from a prospect to a client really quickly by really going back to, okay, the logical side of the brain, the emotional side of the brain, but also getting them on the same path and saying, like, okay, here's the best path forward. And both sides are really, feeling good about what their choice is with that. So this kind of goes back to, again, go back to the bike analogy where, you don't want to hop on a bike right away and just speed away and spend, $1,500 in that first month and risk, having your face hit the ground and not having a return from that. Again, this is really hard in terms of like coming up with a message that really resonates with your audience, kind of going against the grain of what your competition is saying, and to go out there and get the type of notice that you're looking for, and then to start engaging your audience in terms of those emotional connections. So I'm going to walk you through a process tomorrow that kind of builds through this, but what I call conversation ads. And again, this isn't one where you have to spend $1,500 in that first month to find out whether your message worked or not. It's something that you can spend $150, a much lower amount, to start to test out some of these different strategies to find out what your audience really catches their attention, but still get clients on the back end. So again, the whole idea of spending $1,500 with a conversion ad or a lead generation ad is that you get the return on the other side. You get at least a few clients that more than make up for that ad spend that you put out there. But again, what I would tell you is that you can spend $150 and still get a lot of great data coming back about your audience and what resonates with them, but still get clients on the other side of that. And that's really important. So not only are you building up that confidence, again, go back to the metaphor where you're riding the bike, where you can get to the point where you can start to ride with confidence. You're not worried about falling down or not. This is really for those people that are maybe thinking about running Facebook ads. They're kind of getting burned out by doing all that organic content. Or, what I'm doing as well is I'm asking my clients to use these conversation ads, even if they are spending that $1,500 a month in terms of their conversion ads. I'm asking to run these conversation ads first, because it's a great way to kind of warm up their audience. Because, all told, a prospect is going to need to have 5 to 7 touch points before they're ready to sign up with you as a client. So again, going back to the conversations, becoming relationships, conversations, relationships to eventually clients, people need at least 5 to 7 touch points. So again, you're going to have people that they see you one time and they're ready to sign up right away. Within that first instance, you're going to have other people that are going to need 6 months, a year, or whatever before they're ready to sign up with you. But the exact average is right around 5 to 7. So again, I'm setting up these conversation ads to really stick to, okay, how do I warm up something really, really quickly without blowing out an expensive budget, but still getting results along the way, or by really getting that data in terms of like what's resonating with the audience, what isn't. So you can kind of tweak along the way. As you're spending that $150 in that first month, you're getting a lot of great feedback. You're getting to the point where, again, you might be getting on the phone call with people, sales calls, all that kind of stuff. And the best part is, in these conversation ads, you're going to get immediate feedback from your audience as well. In the comments, they're going to let you know what's resonating, what isn't. And that makes it really easy to tweak your message to one that really speaks to them really quickly, again, without having to spend thousands of dollars to find that messaging. So I'll cover a little bit more about conversation ads tomorrow. But in the meantime, if you want to go through my video training that gets into Facebook ads, those conversion ads that you might be thinking about, if you're already running conversion ads right now, spending thousands of dollars in doing that, in fullconfidenceads.com, my video training series, I'll go into how you can even optimize those ads if you're running them all together, or if you're just starting to think about like, okay, like I'm starting to think about running Facebook ads, but I want to just figure out like what they're all about. Again, go back to the riding the bike example. You just want a little bit more trust in terms of what you're getting into. So this will walk you through from a complete start to the end, what you have to do, what buttons to push if you want to do that, and get you to the point where, okay, like once you're running ads, how do I continue to optimize them to get to the best possible results? And also, I'll just point you to my website, mindsetcopy.com. If you want to learn a little bit more about what I do with clients in terms of setting up Facebook ads, but also the full automation to get them to the point where, again, their best clients are knocking on their door every single day. They're getting emails, they're getting phone calls, they're getting Stripe notifications of money coming in the door. And it's kind of freeing up their life. Again, my best promise is kind of saying like, okay, how do I cut my work hours in half? It's something that my own business has been able to experience, but I love to do it for my clients as well. Is like, how can I have your business explode, but have your work hours actually cut in half in the same point? So this is how I do it, by using Facebook ads plus automation. By really creating the right messaging and everything else. So if this was helpful in terms of the opening conversation that I'm having with you, hit that like button. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. Again, tomorrow I'll be getting into a lot more digging into the detail of what conversation ads are all about and what are those basic fundamental things that you have to go out to your audience. Again, using that keys method. How do I catch their attention? How do I emotionally engage with them? How do I kind of introduce my unique formula, and how do I sell them on the next step, kind of in each stage of that conversation ads, so that we get to the point where we're building relationships and we're getting to the point where they're turning into clients right away. So turn in tomorrow in terms of what we have available, and I'll see you on